Voice record at the voice record at the Are we good to go? Yeah? Is YouTube stream on? Okay. Welcome to you all, and as usual, we are gathered here today to learn more about ourselves through the Lord Buddha's teaching. And it is the Lord Buddha's teaching that has given us a true perspective on ourselves, and that's what we come here to explore, to study, to learn and to understand. So, before we commence, as usual, let us take a moment to pay homage to the Lord Buddha, the unequaled one, the unparalleled one, the greatest psychologist, the greatest philosopher, the greatest scientist, the greatest teacher, the greatest doctor that the world has ever seen and the world will ever see. It is because of him that we have his Dhamma. So, as I pay homage to the Lord Buddha, I would request you all to join me. Bring your hands together and mark our respect to the Supreme Lord Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Also, before we commence this sermon, let us take a moment to reflect on the fact that there are lots of beings we have come past in our infinitely long, timeless journey in samsara. And on that path, in that journey, there have been an uncountable, infinite number of beings in whichever shape and form who might have helped us, supported us, guided us on our quest, the quest for our search for the truth. It is now time for us to invite all those beings, now that we have found the path to emancipation, the path to liberation. Let us open this invitation now to all those beings who may have been our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, our uncles, aunts, grandparents, or perhaps our teachers, our close friends, or perhaps even our enemies in our past lives. May they all have an opportunity to join us, to rejoice in this meritorious deed that is about to unfold, and may they all be able to listen to the Buddha's teaching and find the liberation that we are all looking for. So as I now make this invitation, I would request you all to join me and open up your hearts and minds. Make that invitation now, extend that invitation now to all those beings. May they all join us, all the devas, brahmas, spirits, demons and the dead. May they all join us and listen to this sermon and find the truth that the Buddha discovered for all of us. Samanta cakkavalesu atra gacchantu devata Saddhammam munirajasansa sunantu sagga mokkadam Dhamma savana kalo ayam badhanta Dhamma savana kalo ayam badhanta Dhamma savana kalo ayam badhanta. And finally, before we begin, let us also take a moment to reflect on the reality that although today we have the gift of this Dhamma that has changed our lives beyond recognition, beyond our imagination, I think it would be true for us all to say that if you look back at your own lives, if we all look back at our own lives, how we conducted ourselves in the past, who we lived then is a completely different person to who we are now. And that is thanks to the Dhamma. So in our infinitely long time in samsara, where and when we did not have the gift of this Dhamma, oftentimes we would have come across Aryas, noble people, moral people, the Dhamma Sambuddhas, the Pacceka Buddhas, the Arahata Buddhas, the Anagamis, Sakurdagamis and Sotapannas. And in our ignorance and due to the association with immoral people who instilled in us raga, dvesha and moha, having not been able to recognize with those noble people, we might have insulted them, abused them, slandered them, hurt them. Today, we try to seek the path, we try to traverse the path that they discovered and that they taught us. And the past comers today come to hinder our progress. So let us all take a moment to acknowledge that that is the path that we have all led, the past that we have all experienced, but may all those Aryas forgive us for all the times that we have been inconsiderate, for all the times we have abused them, slandered them and hurt them. May they forgive us. May any misdeeds, any wrongdoings we've done through our own ignorance be forgiven, and may we all be able to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Finally, if there are any doubts that we may all have, any locks that need to be unlocked, any barriers that are in our way to our understanding, unlocking our wisdom, may this sermon afford us the opportunity to unlock those barriers, to remove those hindrances from our path, and may we all be able to attain the noble attainment of Sotapanna through the course of this sermon itself. And if there's anyone here who might have attained that noble fruit, may they be able to attain the subsequent noble attainments of Sakurdagami, Anagami, and the supreme bliss of Nibbana through the attainment of Arahata. Okay. I think this is the era for us all to question everything we do. Since the dawn of humanity, the human race has always been an intelligent race. There's no question about that. But intelligence is not the same as wisdom. Just because one has intelligence doesn't mean they're always going to be able to pick right from wrong. Intelligence is merely the ability to work out a problem. Sometimes you don't always get to the right answer. Sometimes you don't always get to the most appropriate answer. If you're entangled, you might work out some way to get out of it. But in the course of untangling or unentangling yourself, you may not always use the most appropriate way to get out of it. So, to be able to do the former, that's intelligence. But where in the process of trying to extract yourself from the problems that we face, if we cause collateral damage, further damage to ourselves as well as our surroundings and our environment and the people that we come across, then that's not always the wisest choice. So wisdom and intelligence are clearly two different things. We're gifted with intelligence. That much is true. But not everyone, not every human being is gifted with wisdom. The general term wisdom is, I think, misused in this day and age. I would say that the Pali term for wisdom is panya or prajna in singular. This is the ability to work out the truth, right from wrong. Right which is not subjective. Right which is always right regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the situation. The Bodhisattva was a person who went looking for that. King Satya Gavesi, King Kusala Gavesi. What is the truth? Satya. What is the truth? What is this Kusala? You've heard of the word kunu, right? That's garbage. You dispose of it at home. Everyone's got a bin at home, right? And what do you put in there? Kunu. Kunu salaharim. Salaharim is to dispose, to throw away. Salaharim. Kunu salaharim is kusala. There's a difference between pina and kusala. Pina is merit. You know, when someone does something good, we say pinsideva. If someone offers you a glass of water, perhaps a meal, or even, if you're on the street and you see a poor man, perhaps a beggar, and you give him a few spare coins, generally you'll hear him say, Mahatteo pinsideva. No, na pinsideva. So pina is merit. This merit is what creates the foundation. It creates the basis for us to be able to live a reasonably happy life. Again, this happiness is very subjective. I think we've discussed happiness many times over in the previous sermons. But kusala is a very different thing. So a bodhisattva is not someone who goes looking for pina. A bodhisattva is not someone who goes looking for merit. He looks for kusala. He looks for the way, the path to eradicate kunu, which is garbage. That which has to be disposed of. What is the garbage that we all hold? I'm not talking about the garbage that you dispose of at home. I'm talking about the garbage that you carry with you 24/7, 365 days a year. From the moment you're born to the moment you die, you're filled with garbage. I'm not talking about the garbage that you excrete through your excretory system. I'm talking about a different kind of garbage. The garbage that we're all trying to dispose of right now. The garbage that we're all learning to get rid of right now. What's this garbage? Lobha dosa moha or raga dvesha moha. That's the garbage that we need to dispose of. Craving, desire, raga. Aversion, hatred, dvesha. Delusion, moha. It's this garbage that defiles our mind. When our minds are defiled, we can't see right from wrong. When we are deluded, we don't always make the right choice. Then these choices become very subjective. It's wisdom that helps us remove raga, dvesha, moha. Intelligence is not what helps us do that. Intelligence helps you solve math problems. It helps you tackle climate change. It helps you work out how a submarine submerges and then how it floats on water. It helps you work out how an aircraft can fly. That's intelligence. Not everyone that's intelligent is wise. There's a huge difference. The reason that you're all sat here listening to this sermon is because you're all wise people. Because, let's be fair, fast forward a month or rewind a month and a half, I think you all had very different plans for a Sunday afternoon, didn't you? Sunday afternoons weren't spent at the temple. Well, at least for most of you, I think it would be fair to say. Again, rewind a few years for me, Sunday afternoon was very different. I used to have friends at home. Watching movies was one of my favorite pastimes. We used to go out bowling. Sometimes went out clubbing. And we had fun. Well, at least I thought I was having fun. But it was all harmless fun. At least I didn't harm anybody else. I was only harming myself. Although I didn't realize I was doing that. But I was an intelligent man. There was the seed of wisdom within me which needed tendering, which needed watering, which needed some sunlight to germinate, to ripe. When the gift of Dhamma was afforded to me, was passed down to me, that's when the seed of wisdom took roots. That's when it germinated. And then slowly but steadily it started growing. And the same is true for all of you. The reason that you choose to do something entirely different with your Sunday afternoons to what you used to do a month, 2 months ago is because the seeds of wisdom has now germinated. You should all be very happy about that. You should all be very proud of that. All of you give yourselves a good pat on your backs. Well deserved. I mean, look at this gathering here today. There are people from all walks of life, young, middle-aged, and the elderly. Everyone trying to work out this problem of life. And you're not just wanting to take any old solution. That's what you used to do. When you went to school, you learned out how to work out life, didn't you? You learned math, you learned science, you learned physics, chemistry, biology. So did I. You learned languages, so you could travel the world. You learned commerce, accounting, business studies, sociology. You learned all of these things to try and work out this problem of life. But one fine day you got to hear a certain kind of teaching. A teaching that opened your eyes. A teaching that got you thinking. And you started questioning. This is why I say this is the era to question everything. It's not the time to take anything for granted. Question everything. But what we should realize in our study of life is that there are lots of different things that we can study. If you take the Tripitaka, the 3 canons, there are 84,000 sutras. 84,000 teachings of the Lord Buddha, all of which in some way, shape or form help us to work out this problem of life. You don't, by the way, need to go and read each and every one of them. You'll be pleased to know. I haven't, and I doubt I ever will. Well, certainly not in this lifetime. I don't have that many years. What I do know, though, is you don't need to know everything to figure out life. There's very little you really need to know. Once you worked out that very little, you've cracked the code. Once you've cracked the code, what you need to know, you know. Everything else is auxiliary, extra knowledge. How did the universe come into being? What about the Big Bang? What about black holes? Are there other planets other than the 9 that we've discovered? I don't know, is it 9 still? It was when I went to school. I don't know how many it is now. You don't need to know all of these things. You see, imagine you are out in the thick of the forest. You're trying to get home. You're lost. It was light when you left home. You went out to gather some food for yourself, some vegetables, some fruit. And now you want to get back home, but you're lost. You're trying to work your way home. As you're trying to navigate, finding your way home, you're looking for various milestones that you passed on the way here, on the way to the forest. An arrow comes and hits you. An arrow is shot by a hunter. By mistake, this arrow has come and hit you. It's hit you right in the middle of your chest. And you're now bleeding. This is a poisoned arrow. And you know that for a fact. My question to you is, if you know that this is a poisoned arrow, is your biggest problem who shot this arrow? What is this arrow made of? How far away is this hunter? How did he get there? Or is it, how soon can I remove this arrow? Which one of these is your biggest problem? Indeed. How soon can you extract this arrow? Because it's a poisoned arrow. The longer this arrow is inside of you, the longer it has to poison you. You know, sometimes if either you have been unfortunate enough, or perhaps you have seen on National Geographic or Discovery Channel, you know, when people get bitten by snakes, they take a tourniquet and they tie the limb, you know, if it's usually a leg or an arm, you tie just above where the snake has bitten you. The reason you do that is to stop the poison from circulating throughout the rest of your body. That's the most important thing you've got to do. Likewise, the most important thing that we should do is stop this poison from getting all over ourselves. We've all got this garbage. This garbage of raga, dvesha, moha has defiled our minds. It's poison. The longer we have raga, dvesha, moha in our minds, the longer we do things that are delusional. The longer we do and conduct ourselves in ways that are detrimental, not just to ourselves, but also to others. The more we cause harm to ourselves as well as others, the more demerit that we accrue. And these demerits have their consequences. You can run, but you can't hide. Have you not all heard that expression? It is so true. I don't know who came up with it, but from the perspective of Dhamma, it is so true. You can run, but you can't hide. Not from karma. You can run from karma by changing the samanantara. I'll talk to you a little bit about samanantara, anantara today. I haven't been able to find the English term for it, but I'm still looking for it. Perhaps I've got myself now a Pali to English dictionary. Let's see how far that will go. But that's still okay. I'll give you the meaning behind it. It doesn't matter whether you call it cats and dogs or cows and pigs. Whether, you know, the fact that it's called samanantara, anantara is not what's important. What we need to do is to understand the meaning behind it, right? You can call it whatever you like. We can run, but we can't hide, ladies and gentlemen. To run from karma, vipaka, or to run from the vipakas of the karmas that you've done, is changing the samanantara. But you can't hide because the anantara doesn't change. So what is this samanantara? What is this anantara? Have you all heard the expression Chetanaham bhikkhave kammang vadami? Volition is karma. Intention is karma. What is Chetana? What is intention? Intention is the want to do something. When you breathe, which is something you're doing right now, hopefully, when you breathe, you are causing the death of millions of germs every minute. You heartless people. When you walk, you're responsible for the death of many thousands of little creatures. You soulless people. How dare you? You are so mean. When you eat, do you think you're only eating rice and paripu? Rice and dal? What about all the little bacteria that's all around your food? If you just go on Google, just go onto YouTube and just do a search for how we consume microorganisms in the process of eating food, you will realize, good heavens, if you go into your kitchen right now, our mothers and particularly the women will try and keep their kitchens spick and span. And you take great pride in keeping your kitchens ultra clean. Try switching on an ultraviolet light. There's germs all over the place. Every time you eat, you're not only eating what you think you're eating, but you're responsible for the death of many thousands, if not millions, of germs. Are you committing panatipata? Are you killing? Before we started the sermon, you all recited panatipata veramani sikkhapadan samadhyami. Didn't you all? You all did that, right? So you said, I observe the precept to refrain from killing. And immediately afterwards you start breathing. That's hypocrisy. Stop breathing. You're killing germs every time you breathe. This was the teaching of not the Buddha, but someone called Nigantanatha. Nigantanatha was a great man. Not as great as the Buddha, but he was a great person. His teaching was of unbound, limitless compassion. He said, recently I got to see a video that someone showed me on a device, and it was the procession in India, I think it was India, where there's a stage on which there's some kind of ceremony, and at the end of that ceremony there's about 30 or 40 young men who walk off the stage wearing absolutely nothing. They've got a book in their hands, which is the Upanishad, which is their philosophy, their teaching. These are the Nigantas. Because they believe that, when you wear clothes, well, then you've got to go and wash your clothes. When you wash clothes, what happens? You kill. Or you're responsible for the death of many beings, many germs. When you cook, then you kill. When you boil some water. So this is their teaching. But this is where the Buddha's teaching is entirely different from that. He says, Chetanaham bhikkhave kammang vadami. If you have the volition, if you have the intention to kill, that is when you have committed a crime. That is when you have committed a sin. Just because beings or animals are dead in the process of you living or getting on with your lives, doesn't mean you are responsible for their death. At least you don't accrue the karma for that. So I want you all to be very clear about this distinction. So you can start breathing now. It's okay. Because when you breathe, you have no intention to kill all those tiny germs that are in the air. There's no intention to do that. All you want is to breathe. When you eat your food, you have no intention to kill germs. All you want is to eat because you're hungry. So Chetanava or volition, intention is always the determining factor. If you have the intention to do something, be that a good karma or a bad karma, that is what brings you the vipaka. So let's say, for instance, you leave some food on a plate outside with the intention of going and collecting it later on for your consumption. When you get back, you see your pet dog lapping it all up. Now that's not a dana. You haven't given it. You didn't have the intention of offering it to the animal. So it's not a dana. It's not charity. But if you had left it there with the intention of, if there's anyone or any animal that might be hungry, then, may they be able to sate their hunger by having this food, then that is a dana. That is charity. So it applies both ways, good and bad. Now parents, sometimes you have to discipline your kids. Not sometimes, all the time. And then I know as parents you get into this conundrum. You get into this dilemma. Do I hit them? Do I not hit them? Do I shout at them? Do I not shout at them? The Buddha comes and teaches us, don't hurt other people. But when I hit them, what happens? Isn't that hurting my child? Do I not acquire bad karma when I do that? Have you never had this question? Have you never wondered, what should I do? This is a dilemma. For as long as you're alive, you're going to have plenty of questions, plenty of problems you're going to have to solve, which will not be clear and upfront. It's always your chetana. It's always your volition, your intention. Why are you hitting your child? When you hit your child, are you hitting your child to take revenge? I've seen some parents do like that. They've had a bad day at work. Their boss has told them off for not doing something. They get home and now they just want to take their frustration out on the next person they meet. Well, you can't take it out on the bus driver. Then you're going to end up in prison. You can't take it up on any old person you meet on the street. So when you know you're in the safe harbor of your home, the next person that comes up to you is a poor child. And all he or she has done is nothing but, something very petty. Maybe perhaps they've not done their homework. Perhaps they've been watching the TV for too long. Now you get an opportunity to relieve yourself of that frustration. And then along comes a good whacking. Or until your frustration goes away. That is not right. But if you hit them entirely with the intention of correcting them, disciplining them, then I can't say that that's entirely bad or it's wrong. The problem is this though. Kalla sukkam, kalla sukha vipaka. the Lord Buddha teaches us. When we live in this world, we end up doing good karmas and bad karmas. There is no way out of this unless you attain Nibbana and remove yourself from this world. Hitting a child, if a child feels pain, if a child feels, well, pain, quite literally. If a child feels pain, then, and if there is even the tiniest, if there's a modicum of anger within you, because, I mean, let's be honest, parents, right? When you hit your child, are you 100% sure that you don't have this tiniest bit of dvesha in your minds? If so, great. No karma, no bad karma committed. But if you do have the tiniest bit of anger, that's dvesha. You're not committing a sin because you're hitting your child. You're committing a sin because you have dvesha in your minds. So, kalla sukkam, kalla sukka vipaka. Kalu sudu, karma, kalu sudu vipaka. Black and white. When you have, think for a moment. If you have, when you're ill and you know it's a bacterial infection, what recourse do you have other than taking antibacterial medicines? Isn't that going to kill all the bacteria inside of you? So in not wanting to commit the sin, do you just let the infection take over and die? Is that what you have this precious human life for? If you have a rash and you know that's caused by some kind of bacteria or a virus, do you not use some kind of ointment or a cream to get rid of it? When you do that, are you not responsible? And if you know it's an antibacterial solution or if it's an antibacterial kind of medication, then you know that this is going to kill. People have worms in their stomach, wormicide. When you have worms in you, what do? You take wormicide tablets, and that's going to kill the worms inside your stomach. Now what happens? Well, that's killing. Of course it's going to accrue bad karma. You will have to suffer the vipaka. But to not treat yourself is unwise. To not treat yourself, then it's going to get worse, and then you're going to die. Would you rather kill a worm or kill a human being? That is yourself. This precious life that you have to attain Nibbana. This is why it's always black and white. If you want to remove yourself of having to solve this problem, then you have to remove yourself from samsara. If you're not alive, then you're not subject to disease. Then you don't have to treat yourself. Then you don't kill any bacteria or viruses or fungi or any other insects. Then you're okay. Again, think about at home. If there's a rat infestation, what do? Do you let the rats take over and then leave your home? Go and build another one? Well, what happens if that is now infested by cockroaches? Now what do? Go and build another house? Again, when you live a lay life, then unfortunately you are going to have to face these situations. As monks, there's little that we hold on to. Like I said, my robes, my alms bowl, the hut that I live in. The other day when I went into my hut, there were a million ants under my mattress. So I asked myself, what am I to do now? So what I did then was I realized that it was because the mattress was laid flat, and then the ants had come and started, bringing their little eggs, and they were all under the mattress. I lifted the mattress. That was me telling the ants, this is not where you're going to build your home. Back when I was a lay person, I remember sometimes I used to take a broom and then brush them all away, sweep them all away. But now I realize I have other alternatives. So I let the ants take their time, to rehome themselves, and I went and just slept in another hut. Well, if there's no other hut, then I'll go and just find some other shelter to spend the night. When I got back the following morning, all the ants had gone. I wasn't responsible for I didn't kill any ants in the process of doing that. But if that was my home, and if I had nowhere else to sleep, which might be the case in most of your lives, what choice do you have? Chetanaham bhikkhave kammang vadami. Chetana, volition, intention is what determines whether you're committing a karma or not. Now, this is why it's important to be wise. The Lord Buddha says, Panyavanta sayan dhammo, nayan dhammo duppanyasa. My teaching is for the wise, it's not for the unwise. It's not for foolish people. Just because you're intelligent doesn't mean you're wise. The reason I'm going over this a few times is to instill within you. It's not enough to be intelligent. Question everything. Ask yourselves, am I doing the right thing? Go and look in the Dhamma. What does the Lord Buddha say that we should be doing in this situation? Study the lives of the Arahatun Vahanses. What did they do? But in the remit that I have to survive as a lay person, what is it that I can, what options do I have? Now, before we started, like I said, you all observed the 5 precepts. I thought today perhaps I'll explain to you the meaning of these 5 precepts in just a little bit more detail than how you understand them in the conventional sense. So let's start with Panatipata. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. If you were listening to me carefully, you'll know or you'll have heard me say Pancha shiksha samadhang vima sandaha namaskare kiyan. I didn't say Pancha sile samadhang vima sandaha namaskare kiyan. Because sila and shiksha are 2 different things. Sila or virtue is something that is instilled within you when you understand the Dhamma. And I'll show you how this happens. The reason we need a code of conduct, the reason we need rules and regulations is because we are prone to doing the wrong things. Isn't that why we have a legislation? Isn't that why we have the courts? Isn't that why we have the police to police us? Because people are prone to doing the wrong things. If every one of us were Arahatun Vahanses, were Arahants, would there be a need for the police? If the entire world population were all Arahants, would we need the armed forces? Would we need the army or the navy or the air force? No. You wouldn't need the police. You wouldn't need the narcotics bureau. Oh, by the way, I have more stories. I'll tell you at the end. I gather these stories you'll be surprised, by speaking to the monks, the young monks who are resident with us at the monastery. There are about 15 now, I think about 20 of them. And every time I get an opportunity, I go and speak to them and I ask them, Swami Nasa, can you tell me a little bit about what life was like before you ordained? Every time they surprise me. I have more stories for you. I'll share them with you at the end. So you wouldn't need the police, you wouldn't need the narcotics bureau if all of us were Arahatun Vahanses, because we wouldn't be prone to committing errors, sins, wrongdoings. When you understand the Dhamma, sila or virtue is something that is instilled in you. When you comprehend the Dhamma, when the Dhamma becomes part of your life, then you don't need a code of conduct. It becomes natural for you to behave in a certain way. So, when the Buddha gave us a code of conduct, when he gave us the Uposatha Sila, when he gave us the 277 rules that a bhikkhu must abide by, they were not for an arahant. These were for people who are in training. So when you observe the 5 precepts, the reason you're observing them, and this is again, question everything. Question everything. Why do you have to observe them? And besides, is it not enough to observe it once? You think about how many times have you observed the five precepts by now. Most of you will probably do it every day. If you go to school, in my school, certainly when I was at school, we observed the 5 precepts every day. I don't know how is it in today's world. But particularly the adults here will have observed the 5 precepts, perhaps, most days of your lives. Do you have to do this every day? Why do you have to do it every day? Isn't once enough? So today you observe the precept to abstain from killing. What happens when you get home? If you have to then kill a mosquito, then you have just broken that precept. So you have to observe it again. If you have lied to someone, then you have broken the precept of musawat. Now you have to observe it again. If you have stolen something, then you have broken the precept of stealing. Now you have to observe it again. So, have you ever questioned from yourself, why do I engage myself in those wrongdoings, knowing that they are wrong in the first place? Did you all come here by yourselves? Did you bring baby Natasha with you? You haven't left her home, did you? No, unfortunately you can't leave her home. She's always with you. Baby Natasha. If you're wondering who the hell baby Natasha is, you're going to have to listen to last week's sermon. So when baby Natasha cries, then you're prepared to engage in the 10 unwholesome deeds. You're prepared to kill when baby Natasha cries because you want her to stop crying. When baby Natasha cries, you're prepared to go steal. No matter what it takes, you're prepared to do that. When she starts crying, you're prepared to lie. No matter what it takes. You want to get her to stop crying. But when you realize this baby doesn't really exist, this is just a fiction, this is just a creation of my own mind, this is just delusion, playing tricks, this is simply ignorance. Now are you prepared to kill? Now are you prepared to steal? Now are you prepared to lie? I think you have the answer to that. So the only difference is understanding the truth. This is why King Satya Gavesi is so important. Understanding the truth is so important. Because once you've understood the truth, you then no longer have to restrain yourselves. Observing the 5 precepts is a promise to restrain yourself, is it not? When you go to the temple and you observe the 8 precepts on a Poya day, that's a promise to restrain yourself. When you become a Samanera monk and you take up the code of conduct, the monastic code of conduct, that's a promise to restrain yourself. When you enter higher ordination, Upasampada, and you observe the 277 rules laid out for a monk, that's a promise to restrain yourself. And this cause of restraining oneself exists not just in Buddhism but also in other religions. The 10 Commandments. And in the Holy Quran, there are codes of conduct, all of which are there to help people restrain themselves. But why do you need to restrain yourself? Think about when you first bought, if you all have a pet animal at home. When you first got yourself a pet, whether it was a pet cat or a pet dog, okay, let's take a cat, right? Because this is where you'll probably have seen this most. When you got yourself a pet cat, for the first few days, you're going to have to cage the animal. You can't let it just roam free. Why not? Because you know it's going to leave home. Because you know it's going to run away. Because you know it's going to go looking for its siblings, its parents. But after a while it gets used to you, it becomes docile, domesticated, and now it knows that this is home. Now you can let it roam freely. It goes for a walk around the neighborhood, but by lunchtime you can be guaranteed it's waiting by your kitchen door. It knows home now. You no longer need to restrain that animal. Now it has been domesticated. Now it has been trained. Aren't we all the same? Don't we all need to be domesticated? Don't we all need some kind of training? When we have raga, dvesha, moha, our minds are on the loose. Is running AWOL all over the place. Delusion, madness, insanity, crazy. Can you trust a crazy man? Can you trust a madman? Recently I got to hear this story where there was this doctor who was he was the incumbent doctor in a psychiatric ward. And apparently there was a man who was one of his patients, psychiatric patients in the ward. So the doctor looks at him and he sees a knife in this man's hand. And the doctor sees this man running towards him, or at least walking towards him. Now the doctor he gets a bit agitated because it's a madman. Anything could happen. So the doctor's now scared. He's thinking, well, this man's gonna come and do me harm. So he starts moving away. And as the doctor's pace starts to quicken up, then so does the madman's. Now he stops walking and he starts running. When he does that, the doctor is now running. So now the doctor and the patient, they're both running. The doctor running for his life, the madman running with a knife in his hand. So he runs for as far as his legs can get him, and now the doctor can't run anymore. He's so tired. So he stops running. He's now on the ground. The madman comes to him, and the doctor says, please, please, please don't hurt me. I'll give you whatever you want. And then the madman says, I've just come to offer you a slice of apple. How difficult it is for me to give you that. Good heavens, are you mad? All I came was to give you a slice of apple, a slice of fruit. But because this was a madman, the doctor couldn't trust this man. Now if you all have your baby Natasha with you, and last week you said, everyone that has a baby Natasha is a madman, how can you trust yourself? How can you trust the person sat next to you? Aren't you scared? I'm glad that you're about 6-7 feet away from me. Because for as long as delusion exists within us, raga, dvesha, moha reigns over us. Raga, dvesha, moha is king. And when that king is in power, when a mad king is in power, There's no end to how much damage he can do to the country. There's no limit to how much damage he can cause to its civilians. This is why the most important thing that we need to do is to try and cure this madness, this lunacy. So this is why there's a code of conduct. A code of conduct to protect ourselves from whom? From whom? From ourselves. Why do you think we observe the 5 precepts? To protect ourselves from whom? Ladies and gentlemen, that's to protect ourselves from ourselves. Because we don't know right from wrong. I mean, if you were absolutely, if you had the Dhamma, right? If you have a good understanding of the Dhamma, and you understand that killing is a completely useless, meaningless, essenceless deed, and there's only consequences, bad vipakas to suffer as a result of it, and you understand the anicca, dukkha, anatta nature of this world, do you think someone is to come and tell you don't kill? Do you think someone's going to have to come and force you not to kill? Do you think someone's going to have to come and tell you not to rob, not to steal, not to lie, not to engage in sensual misconduct? No. When you understand that all of Rupa is anicca, dukkha, anatta, all the Rupas I have seen up until this point in my life has left me with nothing, absolutely nothing. I think if you came along to some of the past sermons, you will know what I'm talking about right now. It leaves us with nothing. I'm seeing a few blank faces, so I'll remind you what it was we discussed. You know, think about all the sights you've seen with your eyes up until this point in your life. What did it leave you with? Do you have all the sights that you looked at throughout your life? All the pictures, all the photos, all the times you went on holiday, went to Singapore, went to Malaysia, went to UK, went to Brazil, went to Brussels, right? Where are all those images that you saw when you went there? Do you have what do you have left? Can you come and give me all those images that you saw, all those sights that you saw? Can you come and give it to me now? Can you look at them again? Yes, if you've taken a picture, but now you're looking at the picture, not the sight you saw. What about all the sounds you heard? Can you relive that experience? Has it not only left you with nothing but a memory? You're just a hard disk. What else has it left you with? What about all the tastes that you went after? The physical sensations you went after? The smells that you went after? What has it left you with? Nothing but a memory. That's it. And you remember I asked the question, how many hours a day do you sleep? How many hours a day do you sleep? Can you show it to me on the palms of your hand with your fingers? How many hours a day do you sleep? 5? 6? 7? 6? 8? 5? I'm getting lots of answers from across the room. When you sleep, what do you do? What's your favorite thing you do when you sleep? You dream. When you woken up from your dream, what's left? Anything more than the memory of your dream? Are you left with anything more than the memory of your dream? No. So you have the memory of your dream. Okay, so what's left from the last time you went to the beach? Are you left with anything more than the memory of your visit to the beach? What about the last time you went to the zoo? What about the last time you climbed Sigiriya? What about the last time you went to Singharaja? Are you left with anything more than the memory of your visit there? What about the last time you had chocolate cake? Are you left with anything more than your memory of chocolate cake? What about pizza? I can read right through your eyes. Are you left with anything more than the memory of it? Well, when you sleep, you are left with nothing more than the memory of your dreams. All your life you went out looking for, pleasing your eyes, pleasing your ears, pleasing your nose, pleasing your tongue, pleasing your physical body. And you are left with nothing but the memory of those things. So you are left with the memory from your dreams, you are left with the memory of the things you've done while you were awake. Aren't they both the same thing? If that is the case and you're left with nothing but your memories, haven't you been sleeping all your life? So why tell me you only sleep for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day? You're sleeping all day long. 24 hours a day, we're all asleep. This is the problem. So anyway, let's come back to what we were discussing. These things we've discussed in the past. I think we get to see some new faces every day, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think that's because you go and tell your friends about these sermons and you invite them to join so that they may benefit. So sometimes we'll go over stuff we've talked about in the past, because otherwise they're just going to be lost, not knowing. When I say baby Natasha, people are scratching their heads wondering, baby who? I never had a baby Natasha. This baby Natasha is the self that you have, that we all have within us. I think about 2 hours of last week's sermon was describing the nature of this baby Natasha, and I think thankfully to one of you who managed to record last week's sermon, they shared that with us, and now we can make it available to our listeners. Unfortunately, at the end, it was only at the end of the sermon I realized that the recording was not available and it hadn't streamed correctly on the internet either. So as soon as we get back to the monastery, we'll make that available again to our listeners. So if you didn't get an opportunity to listen to last week's sermon, I would encourage you to do so. And try and keep up with these sermons, because we want to build up on what we discussed the previous week. Otherwise, it's always going to be starting from scratch, which will slow us down. So we need codes of conduct. We need rules and regulations to protect ourselves from ourselves. Because when you commit panatipata, when you kill a living being, you're going to have to suffer the consequences. You kill that poor thing. I mean, it might be a poor thing, it might be a cruel animal, it doesn't matter. You kill that animal because of not understanding the Dhamma. Okay, let me ask you a question. Which of these people may kill an animal? A Prutakjana, a Sotapanna, Arihatun Mahansa. Will an Arahant ever kill an animal? Yes? Any yeses in the house? Yes? Yes. Okay. Will a Sotapanna ever kill an animal? Yes. Will a Prutakjana ever kill an animal? Yes. Okay. Now I'll ask another question. Will an Arahant ever intentionally kill an animal? Yes or no? Any yeses in the house? No. Will a Sotapanna intentionally ever kill an animal? I'm getting a few yeses and I'm getting a few no's. Okay, we're getting a few yeses, a few no's. Will a Prutakjana? Who's the Prutakjana? The field producer. No. A Prutakjana is a mundane, worldly person, right? Someone who has absolutely zero understanding of the Dhamma, of the Buddha's Dhamma. Ever intentionally kill an animal? Yes or no? Yes, it's possible. Okay, right. So I think we have no questions, no grey areas about a Prutakjana. There were no questions about an Arahant intentionally killing an animal. An Arahant may unintentionally kill an animal, not knowing that he's killing an animal. That's possible. What happens when an Arahant is breathing? You know, the examples I gave you earlier. When an arahant is eating, when he takes medicine, right? These things can happen. What about when you take a wash? Oh, by the way, recently I found this article on the net, and I want you all to guess how much of your body weight do you think is not you? By which I mean other microorganisms. How much of your body weight? How many grams do you think it is? If you think it's less than 10 or less than 10 or more than 10 grams, less or more? More, okay. 100, less or more? Anyone saying more? Okay. 500 grams, less or more? 2.5 kilos. 2.5 kilos of your body weight is actually not you. It's all microorganisms. It could be bacteria that live on your skin, all kinds of fungi that again could live on your skin. It could be bacteria that live in your gut. It could be perhaps worms if you're, I'm talking about a normal, healthy person. 2.5 kilos of your body weight is actually not you. So when an arahant takes a wash and he applies soap on his body, that's going to kill quite a lot of those microorganisms. But intentionally he's not going to do that. Never. Not even to preserve himself. So if an arahant sees that there is, if an arahant lives in a hut and there are insects and there's an infestation of insects, then no matter what the circumstances are, he'll either go and sleep outside, be it in the rain or be in the sun if he can't find any other shelter. What is the reason for this? This is what we need to question. What is the reason for this? What do we try to preserve? What are the type of things that we try to preserve? Think from your practical lives. What kind of things do you preserve? Things? Things that you give value to. The things that you value are the things that you preserve, right? Is that true for all of you? When you go to the barber and you have a haircut, do you instruct the barber, hey, you know that hair that you just cut, make sure you sweep it carefully to a side, okay? Make sure that's looked after, that's taken care of. Do you say that to the barber? But what about while it's on your head? It's the same hair. Now you take good care of it. Now you wash it. Now you keep it clean. You comb your hair. You brush your hair. You apply oil. When it's off your head, now it has no value. While it's on your head, it has plenty of value. The things that you value are the things that you own. And the things that you value are the things that you want to preserve. You don't care about the person next door. If he has an accident, yes, of course you're going to go and ask him, hey, is everything okay? But it's not going to feel the same as if it happens to you or someone in your family. Because you value your family more than you value the person next door. You value your job than you value someone else's job. You value your child's life than you value someone else's life. You value your furniture more than you value someone else's. So the things that you value are the things that you're going to preserve. Would you all agree with me? Okay. So, in trying to preserve what you value, you're willing to do certain things. For as long as you value baby Natasha's life, and you want her to be happy, you're going to do what you can to keep her happy. For as long as you value your life, for as long as you value your body, for as long as you value yourself, you're going to do whatever you can to preserve yourself. But when you come to a complete understanding that this self is a delusion, there is no such thing as a self. All this time, this self-view I've had was nothing but the result of ignorance. Now, how does that change the game? What are you now prepared to do to preserve it? You know, think about if you had a safe at home. If you have a safe at home, I used to have a safe, and into which I put my personal documents to keep it safe from fire and natural disasters. I don't have such documents now, thankfully. So all those documents that I used to keep in the safe, and I used to invest in gold, so I had some gold bars that I used to keep in the safe as well. So all those things I used to keep in the safe, I did so to preserve it, to make sure it was safe from thieves, as well as from a fire, from floods, etc., etc., etc. Right? What if someone came and said, you know, from today onwards, gold has no value. Gold is meaningless. Gold is worth less than a grain of sand. Am I any longer going to keep it locked in a safe? The safe is more worth than the gold that's in it. So if I could, I'd make a safe out of gold and put the safe inside the gold safe. So as long as we value something, we're going to do what we can to preserve it. When we've lost value in it, when we understand that the value that we give to things is a false valuation, from that point forward, you're not going to value it. I'll give you another example. You've all got photographs at home of your parents, of your children, etc., etc. Let's say you've been handed down a photograph of your grandfather, which you've treasured all your life. Your parents did before you, or let's say it was your great-great-great-grandfather. I don't know if photography existed in that time, but let's say it did, okay? So you've got this black and white picture of your great-great-great-grandfather. It was passed down to his children, and from them to his children, to their children, and then to their children, and to their children, and finally now it's with you. So this is now a picture of your great-great-great-great-grandfather. You have preserved it because for generations long this has been a treasure of your family. If I came and took it from you, wouldn't that cause you some distress? It would, wouldn't it? Because this is a treasure. It's an heirloom. It's part of your family's legacy. So you would want to preserve it. What if though, one fine day I come along and say, hey, guess what? I've just been to Castle Street and I've looked at your records. It appears that you got switched at the hospital. These parents that you call parents, they're actually not your real parents. We've managed to locate your parents. Here they are. All that time, that picture of your great-great-great-great-grandfather, you had it laminated, you had it preserved, it was in a safe, and you'd put in, you know, those packets of gel that absorb all the moisture from the environment to keep it safe. Now I've just told you that that is not your great-great-great-great-grandfather. In fact, none of your ancestors, you thought you were your ancestors, are your real ancestors. How much further are you going to work hard to preserve this photograph? Now if I come and took it from you, is that going to hurt you? Is that going to cause you any distress? No. Why? Previously, it was an heirloom. Previously, you treasured it. Now, you give it no value. Absolutely no value. But what if we manage to find the real great-great-great-great-grandchildren of that person and said, hey, we've just found this picture of your ancestor. Now to them, it's going to be something that is worth treasuring. So for as long as there are things that we value in our lives, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to want to preserve them. The thing that you all value, which I can say with absolute confidence, the most is what? Baby Natasha. It's not your children. It's not your mother. It's not your father. It's not your house. It's not your gold. It's not your money. But it's your baby Natasha. This thing that you call self, mama. That is the most precious, most valuable thing that you all so dearly hold on to. And to protect it and to preserve it, you're willing to do whatever it takes. Up until the point you become a Sotapanna. At the point you become a Sotapanna, see, I mean, this is the beauty of this Dhamma. It is so logical, which is why I love it. I've always wanted to study logic. I've never been someone that accepts something just because someone says it. And my father was a scientist, and he always taught me to think about things logically. Only accept things that make sense to you, and only accept things that is true to you. And so that's how I've always thought. The reason that I love the Buddha Dhamma so much is because it's so logical. When a Pruthajjana becomes a Sotapanna, his ignorance goes down to a certain extent. If a Pruthajjana's ignorance is 100%, it goes down to, let's say, 75%. Now the things that you used to do with the extra 25%, you're no longer prepared to do. When you understand that this baby Natasha is nothing but a false, imaginary, it's a creation of my own delusion, you're no longer prepared to do the things that you were used to do. You know, I think last week we asked one of our listeners, how many, what kids do you have? And she said, I've got 2 sons, I think she said. And then I asked her, what's your daughter's name? Do you remember? If you were here last week, then you'll remember. So what was her response? She said, I don't have a daughter. But I kept going on. I said, what school does your daughter go to? And she said, I don't have a daughter. And I then asked her, how much money do you put aside into your daughter's bank account? That's when she started getting annoyed. And so I stopped the questioning. But the point I was trying to get across is, we don't do things for things that we don't have. If you don't have a daughter, you're not going to name a daughter. You're not going to have a house for your daughter. You're not going to give your daughter's hand in marriage to a man. You're not going to have a bank account into which you're going to start saving money because you don't have a daughter. So when you realize that you don't have this thing called a self, you're not going to be prepared to do the things that you've been doing all this time. But the understanding of a Sotapanna is like this. Because it's, one might question, well, why does a Sotapanna... So, just going back to the question I asked you before, will a Sotapanna deliberately, intentionally kill? Is that possible? Some of you said yes, some of you said no. Let's find the answer to that question. A Sotapanna's understanding is like this. Imagine a dark night. No, not the Dark Knight from Batman. Imagine a dark night as in the opposite of day, right? Where there's the moon, but there's clouds that have overshadowed the moon. So you can't see the light from the moon. It's complete pitch black dark. Now I ask you to go outside. When you step outside, you're going to be cautious. You're going to be careful because you can't see where you're treading. You can't see what you're touching. You can't see where you're going to put your foot. So you're going to have to be very careful. So you don't know if the next thing you're going to touch is something that can hurt you, something that can harm you. You don't know the next step you're going to take is you're going to tread on a scorpion. That's entirely possible. Is it not? Yes, because you can't see. But when the clouds move away, when the sky clears up, and now the moon starts shedding its light. While the light is there, you can see what's going on. You can now observe the environment. Now you can see where there's plants, where there are animals, where there's the ground, where it's safe and where it's not safe to tread, where it's not safe to touch, and where it's okay and it's safe to touch, right? But again, when the clouds come and cover the moon, again you are back to pitch black darkness. The understanding of a Sotapanna is just like that. When a Sotapanna contemplates, when he thinks, when he analyzes, then he can see right from wrong. But when he doesn't, at that point in time, delusion has taken over. So, a Sotapanna, it's entirely possible that a Sotapanna could kill. It's entirely possible that a Sotapanna could steal. It's entirely possible that a Sotapanna can engage in sensual misconduct or lie. What happens is, when a Sotapanna becomes a Sakurdagami, night slowly becomes day. So imagine when you're a Sotapanna, it's 12 o'clock at night. When there are no clouds, then you can see. So, when a Sotapanna is about to go and kill an animal or sees an animal, if he is able to, at that point in time, think about what he's just about to do, at that point when his wisdom takes dominance, then he sees right from wrong. However, he's never going to commit a sin that's going to lead him to the four hells, because his ignorance is now 25%. Remember, a Pruthakjana is someone where there's a night with absolutely no moon. So it doesn't matter where the clouds are, whether there is a clear sky or not, there is no moon in the sky. There is not even a modicum of wisdom. A Sotapanna is like someone where there's a moon in the sky that can shed light, but from time to time the clouds of delusion come and cover the moon. However, have you heard the phrase Dhammo have rakkati Dhammachari? The Dhamma protects one who behaves in the Dhamma. This is how a Sotapanna is protected by the Dhamma itself. If by killing an animal, the sin that he commits is going to take him to the apayas, no way is he going to be doing that. He will never do that. He's never going to want to feel to do it. Let me give you this example. Let's say there's a Sotapanna who's a train driver. Okay? So he's a train driver. He's driving a train. It's on the tracks. This train is moving fast. And at one point, the driver can see that there's a bifurcation on the track. So what's a bifurcation? Where it splits in two. So let's say it's a Y joint. So you can either go left or you can go right. And the driver has complete control over which way he's going to go. Now this is a completely hypothetical situation, right? But the reason I'm relating this is so you can understand how the Dhamma protects a Sotapanna. There are the right hand side track. Let's say there are 10 people that are tied to the track, and if he picks the track on the right hand side, then he's going to cause the death of each of those 10 people by going over them. On the left hand side is this person's mother, so she's tied to the track as well. So if he picks the left hand side track, then he's going to cause the death of his mother. The Sotapanna does not know which one is the mother. He doesn't know that it's his mother that's on the left hand side. There is no way he's ever going to pick the left-hand side track. It's just a zero possibility. It's not going to happen. Okay, let's say he did. If he were to pick the left-hand side track to save the lives of 10, intelligent people would make that choice, right? I'm going to sacrifice the life of 1 to save the life of 10. So I'm going to pick the left-hand side track. He picks the left-hand side track. Now the train is moving fast. And in the next few moments, his mother is going to die because he deliberately chose the left-hand side track. The train may derail, and all 5,000 people on the train may die, but his mother is going to be saved. Because no way can the mother of a Sotapanna die through his action. That just cannot happen. So if you want to check if you're a Sotapanna, don't do this at home. What you could do is take a knife, walk up and try and stab your mother. If stabbing your mother is going to kill her, then it's not going to happen. If that's going to cause her death, someone else is at least going to come and shoot her in the head. And so the shot in the head is going to cause her death, not you stabbing her. Please don't try that at home. The reason I'm giving you these vivid examples is because I want to make it absolutely crystal clear for you all how important it is, this realization of this understanding of a Sotapanna. Why it's so important to become a Sotapanna. No way will you ever do something deliberately that can lead you to the hells. That just cannot happen. But taking the life of an animal can happen by a Sotapanna. Again, let me take an example. Let's say you are a family man and you feed your family by engaging in some kind of, let's say you're a farmer and there's been drought after drought, year after year, and all the rice and all the paddy you've saved up has now been exhausted, and there's no way you can now feed your children. Your children are crying, your family is famished. They've all started to be they're all now malnourished, and if you don't feed them soon enough, they're probably going to die. At this point, a Sotapanna might wonder, what options do I have right now? I can't farm because there are no rains, and I've tried everything I can, but there's no crop. At this point, it's possible that he may go and steal something from somebody else. But even when he steals, he knows without a shadow of a doubt what I am doing is wrong. There is not a shadow of a doubt. There's no question. He knows that stealing is wrong. He knows that killing is wrong. He knows that lying is wrong. But because he has no other option, or so he thinks, he's prepared to do that, to save his family. Why? Because his family is something of great value to him. You see, even a Sotapanna values things in life. He values himself, he values his family. These are not the only two things that he values. There are lots of other things that a Sotapanna values. I mean, he might value his home. A Sotapanna might kill some insects. If there's a rat infestation, he might poison rats. I can't tell that for certain, yes or no. But it's possible. So the thing is, you can't judge a Sotapanna just by looking at his actions. But the chances of something like that happening are very slim. If you were to give it as a percentage, it would probably be 0.00000, 1,000 zeros and a 1%. But even if a sin is committed, the gravity with which that sin is committed, the intention, chetana, is not so strong that it can take that person to hell. Now what if someone commits a sin as a pruthakjana, then they become a sotapanna, and at the moment of death they are reminded of the action that they did. Because at the moment of death, this is what happens. You're either reminded of something you've done, a karma, you're either reminded of something that you used to commit the karma, or you are reminded, or you see a foresight, which is the place you're going to go after you've died. It's one of these three things. So be prepared. And this karma can either be a good karma or a bad karma. So if as a pruthakjana you might have committed a sin. Remember last week I said there's an anagarika who's with us, who's looking to become a monk soon. And he told me that as a young child, one of the things that he did to experiment was to take a small fish from the fish tank and throw it into an oil pan to see what might happen. Today he regrets. Today he says, I have, how foolish I was when I did that. But that karma can come to him when, at the moment of his death. This is why we need to be prepared for it. Because we can't choose what thought comes to our mind at the moment of our death. I mean, some people try to do that. Chutisita pirisudu karana. You will have heard people say. Chutichitta. The thought with which, the last thought that you have in this birth. Some people try to cleanse the chuti chitta. That's not possible. Because you can't pick that chitta. You can't focus on one chitta at one given time. When I flick my fingers, in the moment that it takes for you to hear that, that's like 1,000,000 chittas. Now can you pick the 372nd chitta? Alright, go on. Can you? No. Okay, let's say it's not 1,000,000. Let's say it's 100. Okay, now can you pick the 86th chitta? You'll have to prove it to me that it was the 86th and not the 87th. You can't. Therefore, you can't pick the chitta with which you're going to pass away. This is why you have to clean it at the roots. So if someone says, don't worry about any of this, we'll just cleanse the chuti chitta, please don't fall into that trap. I mean, I can only tell you what to do. It's up to you what you choose to do with your life. You can't, please don't fall into that trap. This is why think about, anyway, let's go back to that example. So this child that tells me, Swami Mahansa, this is something I did as a young foolish child, as a young foolish person. And I tell him, well, how do you know that you're not going to be reminded of that chitta at the moment of your death? He says, I don't, and I feel so helpless. Now, why don't you all think about the things that you've done in your life that you regret? If you've hurt animals, if you've hurt another living being, if you've lied, if you've stolen, if you've engaged in sensual misconduct, these things you might be remembered. They might come back to you at the moment of your death. So what happens then? This is what happens. As a pruthakjana, if you've committed the sin of killing somebody, at the moment of your death, it may be that you're reminded of this incident. At that point in time, your mind faculty is at its strongest, because all the other faculties have now gradually stopped working. Your mind is what goes last. I think it's your sound before that, your sense of hearing just before that. So your eyes stop hearing, your eyes stop seeing, you can't feel things, you can't smell, you can't taste. But till the last moment you can hear. But once that's gone as well, this is why people chant Pirit.
when people are about to pass away, because that's usually the last sense that they lose. So it's a good thing. It's never a bad thing. You know, if there are people in your family that are nearing their last days, then it's a good idea to go and chant Pirit. Or perhaps, you know, even remind them of, actually what's best to do is talk to them about Anicca Dukkha Anatta. That's the best thing to do. Talk to them about the meaningless nature of existence. But if you don't have that understanding, then at least talk to them about the ping that they've done in their lives, the good things that they've done in their lives. Okay? Now, see, the problem is this though. What if someone doesn't like the way you chant Pirit? What if they don't like the sound of your voice? Now they're screwed. So you might as well not have chanted Pirit. You know, some people they have a book in which they write all the meritorious deeds that people do. And again, that's a good thing to do. You know, encourage your children to do that. Write down all the meritorious deeds that they do in their lives. What sometimes people do is they get someone else to read this book before they pass away. Can you hear me? Okay. And is it working? So, as I was saying, it's a good idea to read the good and meritorious deeds that they've done. But what if? So let them worry about that. Let's focus on what we are here to do. You know, let's say they remind you about a time when you were at the temple and you were there to offer alms. Okay, you've given a dana to the monks at the temple. Now, from the outset, that looks like a perfectly good example of something that is good to remind someone who's in their last moments of birth, of their life. But what if, at the moment you remind them about that, their thoughts run to something that they shouldn't have done at the time that they offered the alms? Perhaps a time, you know, in the process of preparing for the dana, you know, their child might have perhaps, you know, come and spilt one of the curries, and maybe it made them really angry. What if they are reminded of that incident? You've reminded them about the dana, but their thoughts now go into something bad that they've done. This is the thing. Your intention was to do something good, but ultimately what's happened is they've now been reminded of something, not, you know, you didn't say it, but, you know, this is, you know, think about if you were to write a book about all the good and bad things you've done in your life, which book do you think will need more pages? Bad, exactly. At least he's being honest. The bad things you've done in your life will account for the bad things you've done in your life will be far more than the good things you've done in your life. And the problem is, you know, even if you think back to a time when you've done something good, chances are that could remind you of something bad that you've done. This is why, I think last week I urged you all to take out an insurance plan for yourselves. I'm not talking about life insurance. I'm not talking about income protection insurance. I'm not talking about mortgage protection insurance. I'm talking about the insurance for yourselves, which is the insurance of becoming a Sotapanna. Because that is the only insurance plan that's going to save you. So this is what's going to happen to someone that's committed a sin in their life at the moment of death, right? Imagine you, let's take each one, you know, you as let's put you into that example. Say you've stolen something. As a Pruthakjana. As a Pruthakjana, you've stolen something, but at some point in your life, you become a Sotapanna. If you are reminded of the incident or the event of where you've stolen something, that event you're reminded at that point in time, and either the event or something that you used to commit the sin, or where you're going to go as a result is what you're going to be remembered of. So let's say it's the event that you're reminded of. If you were a Pruthakjana, what you're going to do at that point is actually commit that sin once again in your mind. Because your mind faculty is the only faculty that's active at that point in time, and all the other faculties have now diminished. In your mind, doing that sin is going to become so vividly clear in your mind. It's going to show up. It's going to be as if you're watching a movie. And then you're going to see the event unfold. Let's say you stole some money from someone's wallet while you're on the bus. In your mind, you're going to see a picture of you in a bus. You're going to see that you're in a bus. All that event is going to replay in your mind. You're going to see someone standing in front of you with their wallet in their back pocket. Again, you're going to put your hand into their wallet, into their pocket, and going to pick the wallet. You're going to take the money, and you're going to commit the sin of stealing. Because you've committed that sin, at that point in time, you've now just committed the karma for which the vipaka is going to be your birth in the hells. Now let's take the situation of a Sotapanna. As a Pruthakjana, it's possible that you might have committed that sin, not knowing right from wrong. You were only an intelligent person, not a wise person. When you were just an intelligent person and you thought, hey, I've got a problem, I need money. What's the easiest way to get money? Steal it. So you again, at the moment of your death, the events unfold. Just like a recording of when you went on holiday, you can play on your TV. Similarly, in your mind's eye, you're going to see that event unfold. There's going to be a man standing in front of you. You're in a bus. He has a wallet in his pocket. But now you're a Sotapanna. You understand the anicca, dukkha, anatta nature of this world. You realize, what is the point of me stealing this? What am I to gain by stealing something that belongs to this person? All the Rupa Rupa, Shabda Rupa, Gandha Rupa, Rasa Rupa, Pottapa Rupa, Dhamma Rupa, this is all I've been looking for in my life. The reason I stole was to get more of them. The reason I killed was to get more of these things. The reason I abused other people was to get more of these things. But none of these things are meaningful to me anymore. At that point, you are not going to put your arm forward to steal. That is how your insurance plan saves you. Wait and see. I'm telling you what's going to happen in a few days, in a few years, in a few months' time. Could be tonight. This is why this is so important. So, as I said, for as long as we have something that we value, we want to preserve these things. And in our want to preserve these things, we are prepared to commit these 5, the things that, the pancha papa karma. Panatipata, adinadana, kamismichachara, musavada, suramere machvamadatta. So let me give you the meanings of these things. Now I'm sure as Buddhists, you will have learned them to some extent, to some degree, and there'll be the meaning that you will have learned at Dhampasal or perhaps at school. But I'm not saying any of those meanings, any of those interpretations are incorrect. Please don't take it in that sense. What I want to offer to you is something a little bit more than that. for something for you wise people to think about. Because you're more than just intelligent people. So let's take the first. Panati pata veramani sikkapadan samadhya. Pana ati pata. Pana or prana is life. Pata or pata is to diminish, to suppress, to put to a low state. Pahat karno ke nahi danno? Ati pahat. To put something into an extremely low state. Prana ati pata. Veramani, to refrain. Sikkapadam, precept. Samadhiyami, I observe. So what is this prana atipaha? There's no question, there's no doubt that taking the life of something, of someone or an animal, is part of this sin. There's no question about that. But there is more to it than that. Every one of you have not only your life as in the breathing, the heart beating life that you have. I mean, that's existence. The things that you do are mostly to survive, right? So eating, sleeping, breathing, all these things are to preserve this life or vitality that you have. But there's also another life that you've built from scratch. From the day you were born to today, all the things you've been doing in your life is to build this personality. This person that you hold so dear. When I ask you, who are you? You don't just tell me, well, I'm just a eating, sleeping, breathing, heart-beating human being. You tell me all the things you've done in your life. You tell me about your personality. You tell me about, what you've learned at school. You tell me about your work, your profession, your educational skills, your qualifications. That personality that you've built, the kind of person you are, that's also part of your life. Can someone's personality not be destroyed by somebody else? If I came up to you and in the presence of somebody else I said, this man, he's a completely useless guy. Think nothing of him. He's waste. He's a complete idiot. What does that do to your personality? Doesn't that damage your personality? It could be at home, it could be in society, it could be at school, wherever the case might be. I mean, think about some of the TV programs you watch. Political debates. What do people do? They slander each other. This guy, look at him, he's a complete useless fellow. He's a waste of space, he's a waste of time. Good riddance of him. Now, what they're not doing, what they're doing is not harming this person's life, but what they're doing is they're damaging this person's personality, his reputation. Reputation, personality is also something that you worked hard to build. So if someone does something to damage someone's reputation, someone's personality, by slandering them, abusing them, using trickery, all of that is also part of panatipata. So killing is not the only way of committing panatipata. Now you could be doing that. Again, remember, volition is what determines what the nature of your karma is, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. So perhaps if you have a child at home and your child has done something wrong, then you might tell them off. You might scold them to say, what is it you've done? You shouldn't behave like this. It's completely wrong of you to do this. And they might feel that their personality is being being hurt, being damaged. But your intention is not to hurt them. Your intention is to correct them, to discipline them. But if you do that with the intention of damaging someone's reputation, someone's personality, then that is also part of Panatipata. Does that make sense? Adinnadana, stealing. Now, again, going back to Panatipata for one moment, think about who is it that does not, under any circumstance, commits Panatipata. It's an Arahatun Wahanse. An Arahatun Wahanse will under no circumstance commit Panatipata. Why? Because they have nothing of value to preserve. Even a Sotapan, as we said before, even a Sotapan is prepared to kill or to steal, even though the chances are extremely slim, they are still prepared to do that because they still value their life, they value their children, they value their homes. And so to preserve these things, they are willing to commit sins. But an Arahatun Wahanse, an Arahant has nothing of value that they want to preserve. I mean, think about, okay, let's take the example of where, you know how Devadatta pushed a rock that hurt the Buddha? You'll have all heard of the story, right? And in doing so, he committed a heinous sin, Anantariya Papakarma, by shaking the Buddha's blood, Budunge Lesolola, right? If you were there when that incident happened, and you saw Devadatta doing that, wouldn't you get involved and stop Devadatta from doing it? If you had an arrow, a bow and arrow in your hands, and you were able to shoot that arrow to kill Devadatta, and in doing so stop the Buddha from being hurt, wouldn't you be prepared to do that? You would, for as long as you are not an Arahatan Wahanse. A Rahatan Wahanse does not even give value to a Buddha. Please don't take this the wrong way. Of course, an Arahatan Wahanse reveres a Buddha. He's constantly reminded. He knows that it's because of the Buddha that I have the freedom, the liberation that I have found today. But the value that you give through ignorance is not there in an Arahat. Because the Arahat an Arahatun Wahanse sees everything as cause and effect. For as long as the causes are there, the effect is going to materialize. It's going to manifest. But if you and I were there, quite possibly, we would probably take the bow and arrow and shoot the arrow at Devadatta. In the process, getting ourselves involved in the Ganudin, in the sansaric transaction that existed between Devadatta and the Buddha. That's not for us to go and get involved in. That's the point. But what do we do in our day-to-day lives? We always want to go and get involved in things. Other people's problems become our problem. We get involved in other people's issues. And by the way, I'm not saying don't go help other people. But in doing so, think carefully about what you're doing. Don't become another factor in that equation. Because as soon as you get involved in that, now you've just kicked off a new sansaric transaction. You have no idea when that's going to get resolved. So, we talked about Panatipata. Adinnadana, which is theft. Now, this is something that we should be very careful of. Because I think theft is something that happens all the time, and usually people don't even realize that they're stealing. If, going back to the example of someone who's a pickpocket. If someone steals from, say you're in a bus and you see someone's wallet, you nick his wallet, take the money you have from him and then carefully put the wallet back, or perhaps even run away with the wallet. You've stolen from one person, haven't you? Haven't you? Yes. But what if you are at your workplace and there's a telephone for you to use, but this telephone is there to be used for official purposes, not for your personal use. But not thinking about this, you pick the receiver up, you start dialing, and now you're on the phone, you're making a personal call. There was never any agreement that this phone could be used for personal use. Are you not committing the theft? Are you not committing a theft? Is this not adinadana? This is most certainly adinadana. This is most certainly theft. That phone was not there for your personal use. It was there for your official use, to make calls for official purposes. Someone's paying the bill for it, it's not you. If, say, part of your contract included the use of the phone for personal calls, then perfectly fine. Now, again, think about, a car that has been given for your official use from your workplace. For as long as you're using it for official purposes, that's perfectly fine. But in the contract that was exchanged between you and your employer, if it nowhere was said that this car can be used for personal use, or at least if there was no verbal agreement of that nature, using the car for personal use is theft. Because that car was not given to you for personal use. Now, am I wrong in saying that people commit theft not even knowing that they're committing theft? You see, the pickpocketer, he only stole from one person. If you use your phone at work to make a personal call, you're stealing from everyone who has ownership of that company. If that company has 500 shareholders, you're stealing from 500 people. Now if you work in the state sector, in the government sector, and you use your official vehicle for personal travel, how many people own the government? 20 million, at least in this country. How many people are you stealing from? 20 million. The pickpocketer ends up in prison. You think, hey, this is just, it's my car, I can use it for whatever I like. Well, where did it say that you can use it for personal use? Where did it say you could use your work phone for personal use? Please take this the right way. I'm not trying to tell you off, and I'm not trying to say, hey, you're all thieves. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I want you to think. I want to save you from, if you're doing misdeeds, wrongdoings without knowing. If you've never thought about this, then that's why I want to encourage you to start thinking. People don't realize they're committing theft. Think about when you were a young child at school. Right? If you took something that belonged to the child that sat next to you, those days you didn't know right from wrong. His or her eraser was better than yours, so you picked it up and put it in your pencil case. Those erasers that has nice fruity smells? I used to have them. Strawberry smell, banana smell. Right? If you like the one that belongs to your friend, when he's not looking, you quickly pick it up and put it in your case, pencil case. Theft has been condoned in every religion. As a higher ordained bhikkhu, theft is a very serious crime. When you are an upasampada bhikshu, as a higher ordained bhikkhu, you can be expelled from the Mahasangha for committing the sin of theft. This is why it's one of the parajikas. It's so serious that, let's say, this winnowing fan does not belong to me. And with the intention to steal, I lift it up. I move it just but 1 inch. I have committed a parajika offense. I am no longer a member of the Mahasangha. I could be donned in robes, but henceforth I'm wearing robes that do not belong to me, that I have no right to wear. So for every moment I'm in these robes, I'm committing the sin of theft. For every time I'm eating something that has been offered to the Mahasangha, I'm committing the sin of theft. For every time I'm sleeping in a hut that has been offered to the Mahasangha, I'm committing the sin of theft. That is how serious theft is. In fact, to lift this up with the intention of theft is what is called a Sanghadisesha. The penalty for which is very serious. But if you move it just but 1 inch, that is a parajika. There are only 3 other sins. There are only 3 other sins that are so serious in the code of that the Buddha laid out for the Mahasangha: murder, engaging in sex, and making claims of qualities that you do not possess. So if I were to say that I'm a Sotapanna, without being a Sotapanna, and knowing fully well that I'm not a Sotapanna, that is a Parajika. If I say that I'm an Arahant, knowing fully well that I'm not an Arahant, that is a Parajika. And from that point forward, for every second I'm in these robes, I'm stealing from the Mahasangha. This is how serious theft is. So the reason I'm giving you this insight is think, please, ladies and gentlemen, because this happens quite a lot. Particularly at your workplaces. I know someone that listened to these sermons once, and because he used to use his work printer, and this happens, I'm sure, think about either yourselves or people that you know, right? When you want to print something off, the easiest thing to do is use your work printer. Switch on your laptop, connect your printer, print, and it's printing away. You're printing your kids' homework. With every page that comes out, you're stealing from everyone that has ownership of the company. You don't realize it's a sin, but when it's time to pay back, you will have to pay. So is it not best to be careful? Is it not better to be forewarned? This is why I'm letting you know. Okay, so that's adinadana. So be very careful. Kamesu miccachara. Now again, the conventional sense of kamesu miccachara in today's day and age is the engaging in sexual misconduct. This is what we learned in Dhampasana, at school and so on. So generally, if it's when you engage in sex, either willfully or unwillingly, with someone else that is under the care or guardianship of parents or another man or another woman, so someone else's husband, someone else's wife, or someone's child without the consent of parents, and so on and so forth. All of that is indeed sexual misconduct. But what I want you to think about is, let's not stop there, because it's kamesu miccachara. Where in the Tripitaka does kama only restrict itself to sex? Because now we are only talking about the 5th kama, or pottabba kama, where you are engaging in seeking pleasure through sex. And when I say sex, it could be all sorts of things, right? I'm not going to go into descriptions. You can all think about all these things. You're intelligent people. Where does it say that kama is only pottabba kama? What about rupa kama? What about shabda kama? What about gandha kama? What about rasa kama? What about dhamma kama? Aren't they misconduct? Isn't that all part of kama? Pancha kama. Rupa kama, shabda kama, gandha kama, rasa kama, pottabba kama. This is why when I speak of the 5 precepts, I don't use the word sexual misconduct. I use the word sensual misconduct. And I do that deliberately. Because these are the 5 senses through which one engages in misconduct. So what is misconduct then? Remember, the Buddha comes into this world to teach us how to attain Nibbana. To teach us how to remove the defilements that are raga, dvesha, moha within our minds. To throw out the garbage. The garbage that we have inside is a result of rupakama, shabdakama, gandhakama, rasakama, pottabhakama. Ka ama. Amaya, kadana. Amaya, what is amaya? Amaya is something that's a delicacy. Have you heard of amurtaya? Ambrosia? Apparently it's the food of the gods. I don't know, perhaps. But amaya is something that is a delicacy, something that is of extreme value. Nivana or Nibbana is the amaya, is what is of most importance and most significance. Kala dano kila kiyanne mokada? To destroy it. So amaya kala dano kila kiyanne mokada? To hinder your path to Nibbana. This is why the Buddha says, Rupakama will hinder your progress to Nibbana. Shabdakama will hinder your progress to Nibbana. Gandhakama will hinder your progress to Nibbana. Rasakama will hinder your progress to Nibbana. Pottabhakama will hinder your progress to Nibbana. So, whenever you're, it could be sights, it could be sounds, it could be taste, it could be smells, it could be sensual touch, or, physical touch. If any of these things you use in a way that hinders your progress to Nibbana, if you are intoxicated or if you indulge in them, all of that comes into kamesu miccāchāra. Kamesu miccāchāra, not kame sumiccāchāra. So again, even when you observe the precept and you say kamesu miccāchāra veramani, miccāchāra is the misconduct element of it. Okay? Miccāchāra. So the point I want to get across is, it's not just sexual misconduct that is part of kamesu miccāchāra. That is only one part of it. So, for someone to point their finger at someone who is sleeping with every woman that they come across, or every man that they come across, for someone to be pointing at their finger and say, hey, you are always breaking the 3rd precept, well, what about all of us? When we indulge ourselves in sensual pleasures, whether that is through our sight, through sound, through smell, through taste, aren't we committing kamesu miccāchāra? Isn't that hindering our path to Nibbana? That's always the question we need to ask ourselves. Question everything. Musavada veramani sikkhapadan samadhiya. Again, the conventional meaning of this word is I shall not lie. And generally lies today are taken as, if someone asks you what color is this and someone says this is black, well, that's a lie. If someone says this is white or cream, then that's the truth. Yes, that is true as well. That is also part of musavada. But how does that stop someone from attaining Nibbana? Because that's what you should always ask yourself. How does this hinder my progress to Nibbana? So what is musavada then? From time to time, there are philosophers that come into this world. The Buddha being the greatest philosopher. He comes into this world and he preaches to us about the truth about this world. He preaches the truth about this world. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. He teaches us there's nothing that is of value that is to be adhered to, that is worth holding on to. He says, learn to let go of these things. None of these things that you're holding on to ultimately bring you happiness. Ultimately, all these things bring you suffering. He teaches us that. Now, despite this teaching, there are others who come along and tell us, not philosophers necessarily, think about your friends. Think about all the advertising, billboards, advertising you see on TV. What do they tell you? Do they tell you that the world is anicca dukkha anatta? Or do they tell you that this world is a place to indulge in pleasure? This world is a place to have fun in. This world is to our liking. Go have fun, go enjoy. This world is nicha. This world is to our liking. This world is sukha. There's nothing but happiness in this world. This world is atta. It's meaningful. This existence is meaningful. Live every day to your fullest. Do everything you can. Be the most you can. Make the most you can. Again, please don't take this the wrong way. Of course, you have to make the most of every day alive. Of course, you have to do the most that you can. Work hard and be the best you can. I'm talking in a completely different sense. I'm talking in the sense of indulging in sensualities. When the Buddha comes along and says, this world is anicca dukkha anatta, that is the satya, the truth. And then for someone to put forward a theory that says, no, this world is iccha sukha atya, that is asatya. Satyavada, musavada. They are the two sides of the coin. So, when someone tells you, or someone teaches that this world is nicca sukha atta, that is the worst kind of musavada there is. Not saying that you're going to candy when you're on your way to Colombo. That is still part of musavada. But how does that stop someone from attaining Nibbana? That is my question. But when someone tells you, no, this world is full of pleasure, why do you want to attain Nibbana? Forget about it. Enjoy, live life. Sensual pleasures is what is, that's what you need to get. Now you're talking musavada. That's the deepest, greatest kind of musavada. And finally we move on to Suramere Majjapama Dattana Veramani Sikkapadan Samadhiya. So yet again, today the interpretation that we have all come to know is, I shall not take intoxicants. Sura pen, alcohol, liquor. In the time of the Buddha, ladies and gentlemen, the Buddha never advised people not to drink. It was not his job to do that. He didn't preach the Dhamma to people who intoxicated themselves. That was not his job. He didn't go around preaching to people who didn't understand the value of their own lives. For someone who intoxicates themselves, either with drugs or with alcohol, has no value for themselves. They don't value their life, they don't value sanity. This is why they intoxicate themselves and become insane in the process of doing that. The Buddha did not go preaching the Dhamma to those kind of people. The Surava that he talks about is the Pancha Sura, Rupa Sura, Shabda Sura, Gandha Sura, Rasa Sura, Pottabha Sura. Intoxicating yourself with Rupa, Shabda, Gandha, Rasa, Sparsha. Of course, taking alcohol is one type of intoxication. That could be Rasa Sura. What about all the other types? If all day long what you do is sit in front of the TV and watch TV, isn't that Rupa Sura? Haven't you just intoxicated yourself? Haven't you just hindered your progress to Nibbana? If all day long all you do is play your computer games and video games, if all day long all you can do is think of playing cricket or watching cricket, doing nothing else with your valuable life, all these seconds that pass by, when are you going to attain Nibbana? That's okay. That's just another subject. For as long as we're still alive, nothing else is a problem. Let the world fall apart. Not our problem right now. Panchasura. For as long as you allow yourself to be intoxicated by Rupasura, Gandhasura, Rasasura, Sabdasura and Pottabasura, that is going to hinder your progress to Nibbana. Again, I want you to understand this. The Buddha is not just any old person. He comes along once every billions of years, once many eons, to come and save just those few people, just those few individuals that can be saved. Do you think the Buddha was able to save? What percentage of beings do you think Gautama Samma Sambuddhana Mahansa was able to save? What percentage? Of all the, okay, let's forget beings, forget the Devas, Brahmas, all those creatures. Just take human beings. What proportion of human beings do you think Gautama Samma Sambuddhana Mahansa was able to save? 20%? 10? 5? 4? 3? 2? 1? Zero point, a trillion zeros and one. And you are all part of it. Remember, he picks up soil onto his thumbnail and he says, this is how much can be saved. He's talking about how much he can save during the course of his ministry, his Shasana. When the Buddha said, my ministry is going to last 5,000 years, he knew exactly how many beings are going to be saved. And you were all part of it. He counted each and every one of you individually. If the Buddha was able to look back many eons worth of his previous lives, just in the wink of his eyes, don't you think when he looked forward 5,000 years and he said, this is when my ministry is going to come to an end, he saw each and every one of you? Absolutely. He saw the color of your hair. He saw where you were going to be sat when you would understand the Dhamma. He saw what clothes you were going to be wearing. He saw whether you were going to be standing or sat down, whether you were going to have your left leg on your right or your right leg on your left. He saw all of that. This is why you need to understand you are all very fortunate, extremely fortunate. There's no limit, there's nothing I really can compare to and say, guys, this is how fortunate you are. There is nothing I can compare to. That's how lucky you are. In the time of the Buddha's era, you've been born humans. You see, recently I was thinking about something. If you were born a Deva or a Brahma in the time of the Buddha's, when the Buddha's teaching was around, let's say you became a Sotapanna, lifespan in the Deva worlds, the lowest Deva world, Chatur Maharajike, one day there is 100 human years. Just one day. So say you became a Sotapanna on day 1. Say in the next few days you were able to practice the Dhamma and you became a Sakurdagami, Anagami, and eventually you became an Arahatu Mahanse as a Deva in the Chatur Maharajike, which is entirely possible. If you had expired just, let's say, 50 days, or let's say 500 days, that's 500 human days, 5 days up there. You're going to be alive for at least another 5,000, 6,000 years. And Arahatun Mahanse has no interest in being alive. In fact, even the process of being alive is a pain to him. One day you're going to realize even the process of breathing is such a labor on me. It's such a pain. You know, when there's a sound, you have to turn your head and look, what's that noise? You have to then process it in your brain. You have to work it out. Every word I'm putting out of my mouth, you have to make sense of it. You have to work out the grammar, you have to work out the tenses, you have to know where to put your punctuation marks. Where do you think all this is happening? I'm not throwing out punctuation marks. No, you're doing all that yourself. So all that is happening inside your computer. Your mind's doing this. So your mind is busily working at it. So for every moment you're awake, for every time you're seeing things around you, you know, when you look at a fan and you see it's rotating. You look around, you see flowers, you see bees, you see trees. You see cars, you see vehicles, you see people moving up and down, going here and there. All these things you're processing inside your mind. Isn't all that something you have to do? All of that is stuff that needs to happen for you to be alive. But when you have no interest in doing it, at that point, does it not become a pain? Why do you think an Arahatun Wahanse goes into Nirodha Samapatti? Even after having become an Arahatun Wahanse, he seeks pleasure by attaining Nirodha Samapatti, which is where his mind comes to a stop. Thoughts don't arise in him for that duration of time. For a maximum of 7 days, he can be in that state. It's like Nibbana while you're still alive. So your thoughts arise, perish, arise, perish, arise, perish. Imagine at this point he goes into Nirodha Samapatti. Arise, perish, arises, perish, arises, perishes. And at this point, zero thoughts. It's like it's a dead person. Heart's not beating, lungs not working. And even the mind has come to a complete still for a maximum of 7 days, at which point he rises again. And then thoughts continue from that point forward. So an Arahatun Wahanse can go into Nirodha Samapatti. So, but why does he go into Nirodha Samapatti? That's the question we need to ask. Because even survival is a pain for him. Going round on arms is a pain for him. Having to wash himself is a pain. When you have no interest, do you take any pain, any labor? Do you exert any effort in preserving the things that you don't have any value for? When you go to the toilet, are you careful about how you flush your toilet? So so that when you flush, the water doesn't damage the what you've passed away? No, you don't care how it gets flushed. Why? Because you don't care about it. You give it no value. The girlfriend that you used to have, do you care what happens to her any longer? No, not my problem anymore. Why? I don't care about her now. But when she was your girlfriend, then you gave value to that person. And you were very careful. You rang her up. Are you still okay? Are you well? You made sure she was looked after, she was fed, everything. But when you lose value for things, then from that point forward you stop preserving them. And life is just the same. This is why an Arahatun Wahanse has no interest in continuing existence. The only reason they do that is for our benefit, so that they can propagate the Dhamma, they can disseminate the Dhamma, and help at least one more person remove themselves from samsara. I told you, I promised you, I'll share a few stories. Just 2 days ago, now the reason I'm sharing this with you is not because I'm here to tell stories. I'm not Katandarata. The reason I'm sharing these stories with you is because I know that there is always a large gathering of young people, especially children, who listen to these sermons, and particularly those who listen to these sermons online. For most of you adults, you don't need these sermons in English. For most of you, your mother tongue is Sinhala, and you can very well understand these sermons in Sinhala. but you take great efforts to bring your children here because they are your most prized, most valuable possession. And the same applies for those listeners abroad. There are lots of countries, I think about 40 different odd countries now listen to these sermons. But what parents do is they bring their children together, and the parents sit down and listen to these sermons in English when they can, without any problem, listen to the Sinhala sermons. And I take, as I've told you before, and I take no shame in saying this, it's not easy to preach in English, because the terms and that express the meaning that the Sinhala terms have is really difficult. But we still keep trying. So the day before yesterday, I had the good opportunity to speak to a few of our young monks at the monastery. And this monk, he is, when he left school, he was in grade 7. He tells me that, and I checked around and to verify this information, and it is true. He tells me that at school, when they had their sports meet, one day, a friend of his, and this happened when he was in grade 6, a friend of his had, so because it was a sports meet, they had children or students visiting from other schools. So there were boys' schools and girls' schools and mixed schools, and so there's everyone in the school at that point. A friend of his had invited him to go to the toilet with him, to the lavatory. Not just for any old business, but he'd gone. He had taken. So one of the students visiting them for the school sports meet was his girlfriend. So he's in grade 6 and he's got a girlfriend. So the girlfriend is now in school, and now this guy takes his girlfriend to the toilet. And he invites this young person who is now a monk with us to go to the toilet with him. And then after they go in, this monk who is now ordained with us, he stands watching guard, as guardsman, watching out. He's the watch guard. And things start to happen. Everything you can imagine. And I tell him, be honest with me. Give me the full detail. Because I want to get this out of him. He's in grade 6. Or he was in grade 6 when this happened. Before soon, they're both naked, the girl and the boy. And now well, you know what's happening. This girl was in grade 5. Shishatvanti. Scholarship class. And I took the effort to go and verify this information. And unfortunately, I found out that it was all true. And he gives me full, vivid detail. Of course, he's shameful now of the things that he did. There are things that he said that I can't tell you in a sermon like this. And then later on, they find an opportunity to go back to this guy's home, and then they do it all again. So I asked him, how were you exposed to this? So I asked him, after receiving, we were talking about for about an hour and a half. And at one point I asked him, how were you exposed to sexual stuff, pornography? He said, it was my friend who introduced me to pornography. I asked him how, what happened? He said once he brought a video on his mobile phone. So you trust your children with mobile phones, right? So this child takes a mobile phone into school and shows his classmates. And I asked him, what did you see? A naked woman getting changed. I asked him, who was it? You want to guess? It was his mother. It sends a shiver down my spine just relating this story back to you. Honestly does. The hairs on my body are standing up right now. His mother. So this guy, he's using his video-enabled camera phone, or he's using his camera phone. He videos his mother getting changed. Takes his phone to school and shows his classmates. And then that's how he got introduced to pornography. And then he said, whenever my parents weren't at home, we had internet at home. I knew all the sites, and asked him, how did you manage to, keep it all secret? Oh, well, my friend taught me, you've got to delete your history. Don't leave anything in the downloads folder. Delete all of them. Go incognito. That's how you do it. I'm sorry, parents. I've got to lay it out there for you. I know you're probably all thinking, no, there's no chance that my children could be doing this. I asked the parents of the young monk, how was your son back at, when he was with you? Did he have a girlfriend? No, Swami, he didn't have a girlfriend. Little do they know. He'd done everything there was to be done. He'd lost his virginity at grade 6. Parents, I tell you, in a few years' time, there's not going to be one young child in Sri Lanka who will have lost his or her virginity at the age of 12. Today it's probably the age of 16. Before long it's going to be the age of 12. Take my word for it. If you don't give them the Dhamma, the whole world's falling apart. The entire world is falling apart. Evil is on the rise. It has been for a long time, but now it's just all over the place. You have no idea what your kids are up to. Mobile devices, I'm not saying don't give it to them, because that's not for me to say. That's for you to decide. These days you can't do your homework without the internet. What can you do? You've got to let them use the internet. You've got to let your children, kids have a mobile phone, because you send them on tuition classes. How do you know if they're safe? When they're running late, the only way you can keep yourself, the only way you can pacify yourself is by giving them a call, making sure they're okay. Because how can you trust them with a driver? Who knows what they're up to? I'm not trying to spread distrust among people. Please don't take it in that way. But what I'm telling you is what's happening out there. Things that you may not hear from elsewhere. Things that people don't like to talk about. But this is what's happening out there. Sex and drugs will prevail. Today, thanks to electronic devices, parents, you have no idea what your kids are up to. You think passwords are going to protect you? Don't you know that there are passwords that you can put into devices which, when you unlock, it looks as if everything's unlocked. But then there's another password which is underneath all of that. That's not visible on the surface. You have to be really tech savvy to know that. How many of you are tech savvy? I'll ask your kids. They'll probably all raise their hands up. So my point is, it's not about keeping them away from technology. That's not the answer. It's not about don't send them to school. Clearly that's not a solution. Of course, be careful about who they associate with. But there's just one thing that you can do to save them, and that is to give them the gift of Dhamma. Once your kids have the gift of Dhamma, once they realize that there is nothing in this world that is worth pursuing, there's nothing in this world that's going to bring ultimate happiness except for Nibbana. Raga, Dvesha, Moha is never going to bring me happiness. Happiness can only be found in letting go. Once they really understand that, that's the only time when they're going to be safe in this world. Otherwise, it's going to be too late for them. Do what you can to save them while you can. I know there was recently when we had the sermon in Panagoda at the army temple, a mother came and spoke to me at the end of the sermon, and she said, Swamin Wahanse, I have a young son who is now 20 years of age, and his father passed away when he was very young, so I am the only one to look after him. He's always been under my care, but now he's been going out with some friends lately, and he doesn't come and speak to me anymore. He locks himself up in his room. He doesn't come out of the room. I mean, see, the thing is, parents, today you think you can control your kids because they're still young. They listen to what you say. You can hit them if they don't behave as you order them to. You can shout at them, and then they're still scared of what you do and say. But one day, when they're taller than you, when they're bigger than you, when they're stronger than you, the tables are going to turn. And on that day, you'll become the child and they'll become the parent. Before it's too late, make sure that's not going to happen. So that mother tells me, Swami Wahanse, please can you come and speak to him? I said, well, please, I can't come and visit you at home, but bring him around if you can. He locks himself up all day long. He doesn't come out of the room. The only times he comes out is to again go out with his friends. He shouts at his mother. This is a young son that she went through all that, so much suffering to bring up. Haven't you done the same with your children? If they're your most prized possession, then do everything you can to protect them, to save them. Give them the gift of Dhamma. It's great that I get to see some young faces every day, regularly and routinely. That's such a delight. This is why sometimes I don't preach, profound Dhamma, Gamuru Dhamma. I don't go there. I don't go into deep Dhamma topics, because then it becomes really uninteresting. It becomes boring for the young children. Clearly what I do understand is the majority of those who benefit from these sermons are those people who live abroad, who are native English speakers, and your children, who for whatever reason don't have a strong command of the Sinhala language. And so I try and cater these sermons to benefit them. So this is why, every time I come and sit on this seat, I'm thinking, there's a wide range of people I need to address. I need to satisfy 6-year-olds. Because, how many times will a young 6-year-old listen to a sermon if he can't understand what the hell I'm talking about? Parents are going through so much to get their kids to listen to these sermons. They'll get them to say, they'll do it once, they'll do it twice. Next time they're just going to fall asleep. So I have to keep them awake. I have to keep it interesting for them. But what's interesting to them might not be interesting to a 50-year-old. Sometimes I have to simplify the words I use. I use the word bifurcation and then I have to say it's a Y junction. So I have to cater these sermons to a vast audience. But that's okay, that's my job. I'm happily doing that. I'll happily continue doing it. And I'll keep improving it. Because I know there's more I can do to improve. There always will be. But please bring your kids along. And parents, whatever is in your power, do that to save them. Because otherwise, there's not going to be a future for them. And all the hard work you've done to save them, to bring them up, is just going to be water under the bridge. Okay. Do you have any questions before we conclude today's sermon? Next week, if you have any questions about, from the topics we've discussed, then I welcome you to, if possible, write them down on a piece of paper and bring them along. And then hand them over to me before we get started, so that I can cover those questions for you as well. Because right now we don't have a massive audience, and so you have the opportunity to put questions forward. One day there's going to be a large audience. That's not because I'm so good at preaching. It's because this is the Lord Buddha's Dhamma we're discussing, right? So one day there's going to be a large audience, and when that day comes, it may be not so easy. So next week, listen to the previous sermons. I think last week's sermon as well, we'll try and get it online. Please make some time to listen to it. It's on Skype, isn't it? There's a link to it on Skype, yes. So there's a Skype group. If you haven't joined that, then please join that Skype group. Please ask our organizers, they'll give you the details. On that Skype group, there's all the details about when the next sermons are, what times, if there's any delay, as well as links to previous sermons. And also, if you have the facility to record these sermons, because you can go and give it to someone else. If you go visiting friends, if you go to a party, it's just Bluetooth it over to someone else. Hey, I was listening to this monk the other day. I thought it was interesting. You're an intelligent man. Why don't you listen to it? See what you think. Just send it across. There was a gentleman who came who visited us last Saturday. He's a university professor, and he asked me, do I use LinkedIn? So I said I used to use it, but not anymore. But what he's going to do now is, every time we do these sermons, he's going to record them, or get the recording of it, and then send them out through LinkedIn to his professional network, which I thought was an absolutely fantastic idea, because he sends them out to researchers and their students. People who are intelligent, people who think, people who question everything, people who don't take things for granted. That's exactly the kind of people you are. That's exactly the kind of people I want to talk to. Because that's the kind of people the Buddha gave his Dhamma to. This is the Dhamma for the wise. This is a Dhamma for intelligent people, for clever people like you all. So give the gift of Dhamma as much as you possibly can, and at the same time make sure you make the most of the time that you spend here. Okay. I think with that we'll bring the sermon to an end. So as I said, if you have questions, then bring them around next week. So before we conclude, let us all take a moment to pass the merits, to transfer the merits that we have all acquired in delivering this sermon and in listening to this sermon, as well as organizing all that you have all done today, working hard to make this event possible, to making sure the technology works, to making sure that the message is out there, that people know that this sermon is on, so on and so forth. So every little thing that you've done to make this event possible, to make this sermon possible, all of those are extremely meritorious deeds, because it is the Buddha's Dhamma that we are talking about here, and the gift of Dhamma excels all other gifts, as the Lord Buddha said in his own words. And so it's for that gift of Dhamma that you have all contributed. So may the merits that we have all acquired help us all to attain Nibbana, and all the spirits, demons, devas, brahmas, as well as all those beings in our past, the dead who we invited to join us and listen to this sermon, may they all rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired, and also may the merits that they have all acquired help them achieve the noble attainments of Sotapanna, Sakudagami, Anagami and Arahati in this life itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And also please take a moment to pay respects to those monks, the Bhikkhu, Bhikkhunis, Upasakas and Upasikas who dedicated their lives, who committed their lives and sacrificed their lives to protecting this Dhamma. All those years since the passing away of the Lord Buddha, it is because of them, it is thanks to them that we have the Tripitaka today. It is thanks to them that we have the Dhamma today. It is thanks to all the monks who live in anywhere on this planet, who preach the Dhamma all day long, as well as the monks who are resident in this temple itself, including the chief incumbent monk, the most venerable Uduwe Dhamma Loka Swamin Wahansa. May all those monks, all the bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, upasakas, upasikas who spend their lifetime, who spend every waking moment to disseminating the Lord Buddha's Dhamma for the benefit of themselves and as well as all the other worldly beings, may rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired, and may they all be able to achieve the noble attainments of Sotapanna, Sakudagami, Anagami and Arahati in this lifetime itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, let us all make a firm resolution to understand that the reason we get together every Saturday, every Sunday even, to listen to this Dhamma is because we are all trying to find an answer to this timeless problem, to this endless problem of life. All the things we've done up until this point have just been plasters over a festering wound. It has never really cured the wound for us. But finally today we have found the ultimate cure that's going to take us to the ultimate realization, the ultimate happiness of Nibbana. So may we all who have listened to this sermon throughout the last few hours, may all of us who've taken part in preaching this sermon and also making this event possible, make use of the merits that we have all acquired today. May those merits help us all achieve the noble attainments, and finally achieve the ultimate happiness of Nibbana in the era of the Gautama Samma Sambuddhajan Wahanse itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you all find the supreme bliss of Nibbana in this life itself. Sila Dhanante Sadhu.